Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, where I'm on a one-man mission to make you think differently and positively about all the areas that technology touches in our lives, both in the office and out of the office. Now, I generally try to avoid the news, as getting angry or upset about things that are completely out of my control is just not a good way to start the day. But there have been a few incredibly nasty and distressing scenes on the TV over the last week alone, whether that be the terrorist attack in New Zealand or the cyclone in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And straight away, I've been watching these kind of scenes, I'm thinking, what if technology could help people who are caught right in the middle of disasters, attacks, business disruptions and cyber attacks? But I quickly found it already is. Because I recently discovered a really interesting company called Everbridge, which is a provider of solutions that help enterprises manage critical events such as disasters and business disruptions and cyber attacks. So I invited their CEO onto the show today to talk about this topic, saving lives with technology, but also share his story and offer insights into a post-IPO world and offer CEOs advice on growth strategy after going public. We cover so much ground and so many topics on today's episode, so I'm excited to get him on. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Boston so we can speak with Everbridge CEO Jaime Elliston. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, Neil. I'm Jaime Ellertson. I'm CEO and chairman of the board of Everbridge, Inc. And Everbridge is, in simplest terms, a provider of software solutions that enable organizations to improve their operational response to critical events to ensure people are safe and businesses keep running. But, we're those guys that in a major city like New York City would be used to communicate over an SMS or a push notification on your phone if a bombing or a major shooting happened to keep people safe. Give them the right information in the right place to make a good decision. Or a major corporation like Facebook or Chevron would use to keep their distributed employee populations around the world safe when a major weather disruption like a cyclone or a typhoon hits in Africa or Asia, as it did this month. I got involved with Everbridge, I guess a little bit of history, back in 2009 as an investor and a board member, and then later merged the business I founded, Cloudflare, into Everbridge to take on a operating role from a simply board role in 2011. And prior to that, I have built and led both public and private companies, beginning at the age of 22 with my first startup, and more recently in the Boston area, companies like Interleaf, which was my first public company CEO role, where I led the desktop publishing and document management company through a successful turnaround that led its market cap from 20 million to over $1 billion in 4 years, and then on to other public roles like S1, which invented internet banking, to more recently and just prior to Everbridge, running a small consulting firm in the internet space, a company called Gomez, which used to be known for doing all the benchmarking for speed of internet delivery during Christmas shopping and those momentous early internet days, into the leading internet monitoring and performance management company, which we successfully got to an IPO registration in 2009, and then ultimately sold the business to CompuWare. But over that career, I would tell you that the past 7 years at Everbridge has been one of my most rewarding. We truly have built a global company that is used by over 4,500 enterprises, everything from the largest cities and entire countries to major corporations like 9 of the top 10 U.S. banking firms, or every one of the top 4 consulting or accounting practices globally. And they use us to manage those critical events that can affect their people or operations. And because we're used in such momentous events as a major active shooter or literally evacuation of 10 million people in Florida during a hurricane, we actually not only have built a growing business and taken it public and continue to succeed, but we actually help people and do something that's really satisfying, creates a culture here every day. So it's just a little bit of background on myself and the business today.
You really have been on an incredible journey there. And I love the work that you're doing at Everbridge. It's so important. And like you said a few moments ago, Everbridge is a provider of solutions that help enterprises manage critical events that could be anything from disasters to business disruptions and cyber attacks. But can you just help everyone listening get up to speed by offering a brief overview of maybe some of the problems that you've solved for your clients and what makes Everbridge different from all those other solutions out there?
Sure. In this space, in both the physical security and in some of the virtual areas, we have brought together in a single solution. It's a suite of applications that we deliver over SaaS. So people are signing up for a subscription. They use our product delivered over the internet to basically do everything from quickly and reliably understanding a threat out there. So we pull together over 100 different types of threat data, from weather data, which you can overlay on your people, locations, your facilities, branches, manufacturing sites, office headquarter locations, or as I said, travelers or people out in the field. And then see when there's an event that's going to affect your people. And we start with things like weather, we move to things like crime, all the way through both man-made and natural. So, earthquakes, volcanoes erupting, typhoons, cyclones, to man-made things like an active shooting event, a fire that would disrupt operations, or something as momentum as a terrorist attack, and then help them manage the process to put in place both communications and take steps to do everything from, on a college campus, closing down doors, to ring in an active shooter, to things like communicating to people to shelter in place in an active shooter situation, or in the case of a flood or a volcano eruption in Hawaii, evacuate an area and get out of harm's way. Managing through the hundreds or tens of thousands of events that are required to keep those people safe and bigger business operations running. As I said, we do that for large cities or corporations. A simple example that might illustrate what we do through the life cycle is a major provider of coffee to people out there in North America, perhaps the largest, used us during the recent hurricanes in Florida. In that case, I think Michael made landfall in the Gulf and then moved up through 6 or 7 states. And the plume of that hurricane affected roughly hundreds of stores. So now if you're that major operator, that major business with thousands of employees affected, multiple branch locations, how do you effectively shut those stores down, remove perishable products from the shelves? Because obviously without electricity for 2 or 3 days, you can't then open up the store again and serve, even if it's not affected with flooding or other damage. But how do you shut it down, remove certain aspects, board up windows, and then take those employees and move them maybe just 10 miles outside the hurricane zone? Because here in America, we've been trained, and we get up the morning after a major event, we still want our coffee. And so how can you drive same store sales just outside of that bad zone, utilizing your employees, and then bring those operations back up in a situation to enable the business to recover, to make sure your employees are safe and out of harm's way, and deliver for customers ultimately. There are thousands, in fact, tens of thousands of tasks you have to monitor over those hundreds of stores in multiple states. All that's managed from tracking the hurricane and when it's going to affect, to allow you to shut down things at the last possible moment, then make sure you're going through a proper process, make sure things like shelves are cleared and new facilities or repairs are done, and then reopening stores and redeploying people. All that on a single pane of glass in a solution, allowing the executive team to stay out of SWAT teams and distributed efforts that don't end up getting the right information to the right people and allow you to keep both the people safe and the businesses running. And that's done in an integrated solution. We support those companies across, as I mentioned, almost 5,000 enterprises globally in 50 different countries, 24/7 globally.
Now, we do have a lot of business leaders that are going to be listening to this podcast. And one of the reasons I invited you on today was to get your insights into a post-IPO world. I mean, it's something that a road you've already traveled on. But can you offer any CEO listening advice on a growth strategy after going public?
Yeah, so Neil, the IPO is always an interesting topic because I think many businesses feel that, and entrepreneurs, that the end all be all would be to get to a large enough state with a happy enough group of customers and a strong team behind you with a differentiated product that you'd be able to list publicly, gain access to the capital markets, and obviously create wealth for both internal people as well as shareholders. And so that's at least in the tech environment, as well as in many other manufacturing services, even healthcare, has been a long-term goal for a lot of companies building their business. We went about it a little bit differently. I remember, and maybe showing my age a little bit here, but 20 years ago, a successful company could get to $20-30 million and go public. Today, we increasingly hear about unicorns going public when they already have a billion-dollar valuation and perhaps have several $100 million at a minimum of revenue. We made a conscious decision at Everbridge to go public a little bit earlier. Of course, it is thoughtful, and you have to build a business that is built for scale, has differentiated product, has room to grow in a healthy, large market, and is showing consistency in its financial results, repeatable, scalable financial results that investors believe will deliver future growth. But when we went public, our bankers and our advisors said, you may want to wait for a year or two more. I don't know whether those are fees associated with that recommendation or ease of getting you public and having sustainability for investors. We felt, however, that the size of a company shouldn't be the only metric that you're focused on, because in the end, going public means you have to report your results consistently under SEC and financial guidelines and deliver for shareholders quarter after quarter to build up a relationship with them so they want to continue to invest, hold the equity, and grow with you. And we certainly knew that the journey from 100 million to 250 million is easier than it is from 250 to $1 billion, just simply because of size. It's easier to grow smaller numbers, and you often see companies going from 20 to 100 million and then running into some bumps in the road, or from 100 to 200 reliably, and then reaching a cap in the size they can get to without growing their product set, or it moving into new additional markets, either geographic or product markets. And so we chose to go out when we were trailing 12 months, so 4 quarters trailing revenue of about 85 million, and in the current quarter growing at a annualized rate of about 100 million. And we were considered small. We had an initial market cap of 300 million, but we issued just enough shares to get out and to start that journey with shareholders, because we wanted shareholders as well as employees and customers to enjoy the journey up to a couple of billion-dollar market cap and multiple hundred millions of dollars of revenue. And I'm happy to tell you that we're very successful. We had an initial IPO, not as big as some of the glitzier multi-billion-dollar IPOs, but certainly respectable at $300-400 million of initial market cap. We traded at $12 on our opening day, and since that day have grown almost 500% now to a $75 stock price. Initial listing IPO day $12 to $75 yesterday. I think we closed a little over $75, and have consistently led almost the entire SaaS and tech space as a new public company with our year-over-year growth rates. So we chose to go public and kind of go against the current wisdom of wait until you're a lot larger. I think it's harder to grow as you get larger, just law of large numbers, and take those investors on that journey where they can grow with you and be rewarded if they stick with you. And we now have investors, it's a interesting story, that are investing for the third time. They got in at the IPO at $12, they sold at $22. They jumped back in at $30 and sold at $50. Then they got back in at $55 and now they're holding at $75. And so, and as we've grown the business and created a larger market cap, we also knew, fundamental to our business, that in a relatively conservative space, being a public company, and today we're actually the only public company in our space globally, enabled us to create a bigger brand and persona that would in itself help us grow the business and drive customers to our business. Because we appear to be a very stable company. Today we have over almost $250 million on our balance sheet, so we're financially stable and a good long-term partner for them to invest their business trust in. We have more ability to invest in the core business through the capital markets and our cash position. And we have a verifiable brand, given we're audited publicly and we actually attest to our financials every quarter and their authenticity and accuracy. And so they feel comfortable making that investment, a multi-year investment, often given our contracts average 3 years with us, and larger ones can be well over $1 million. So there is a kind of counterintuitism that we use to focus on the IPO and then deliver. And I would have to tell you, at least up until last night, we never know what the next quarter will hold in the public markets, but we've accomplished our goals, which were to simply make sure that we were able to build a lasting brand that could deliver. And we chose some of the easier parts of a company's growth to deliver on versus wait until it gets really hard, much harder to double or grow by 40% a $500 million or billion-dollar business than it is to grow a $100 million business. We wanted to ensure we built a large investment community that stuck with us. We have done that with even repeated investors now, sticking with the company, build a brand, and then create transparency for customers, ultimately growing our customer base and value proposition. And that's all worked with our public journey.
Now, before I left the IT world behind, I was struck by how difficult it was to get companies to actually keep good security talent, because with skills being in such short supply, it seemed that every 6 months staff were being poached by other companies. So in your experience, how has security become a competitive recruitment advantage? And what is Everbridge doing to attract talent technology to actually support that? And one of the reasons I ask is because I see you have a relatively new CSO, for example, with a former FBI and national intelligence background. Is that right?
That's correct. Tracy Reinhold joined us this past year as our CSO, Chief Security Officer, and he was formerly the Director of Intelligence at the FBI, and then a senior security guy at companies like Walmart or Fannie Mae, where he ended as Chief Security Officer. So a very, very interesting background. And that leads into how we deal with that battle for talent. I know that in many of your discussions with various tech leaders, you've discussed the war for talent and the need to be able to recruit and retain the best talent possible in the marketplace. And in our industry, in the tech industry, you're almost only as good as your talent. We don't have a manufacturing facility. We don't have huge distribution channels that are enabled by core manufacturing or some sort of hard goods. It is the brain power that goes up and down or walks up and down the elevator or escalator every day or stairs that enable the quality of our solution delivered to our customer. And so we have to compete, especially in Boston and California, in Texas, in London, in Singapore, or in mainland China, with the absolute best of the tech world, at least for talent on a regular basis. The Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Microsofts, all looking for those people that can help them enable and invent that new technology that makes a difference for their customers. The one advantage we have, as I previously mentioned, was that we actually build a solution and have a fast-growing company, but we literally will save lives on a daily basis. And again, a story of how Everbridge is used is which is very, very simple, helps illustrate why people feel so strong about our mission, not just the corporate benefit of being public or having a fast-growing stock or being a public entity. We do a lot of small cities and towns that use us for notification to citizenry when an event happens. But they can also use this just to simply put an alert to the broader public when a police force or public safety officers can't accomplish a task because of their reach. They can't be everywhere at once. And recently in a small community here, a gentleman with dementia had left his home middle of winter. It's a 10-degree day up here in Boston, which we do suffer through during the winters. And the individual was lost. They couldn't find him. Police put out a bolo, an all-hands bulletin to locate him. After 4 hours, couldn't find him. It was falling into darkness. And the family members were worried that that individual would freeze to death. He wouldn't know what to do, would end up somewhere and not be able to be rescued in time to not suffer harm. And so the police turned to Everbridge and put out a citizenry alert with a picture of the individual. In less than 30 minutes, someone reported him huddled in a corner of a bus stop, an outdoor bus stop, and the police were able to pick up the elder gentleman and return him to his family safety without harm other than needing a few cups of hot chocolate. And the ability to extend into the community, to leverage the entire population to help solve a crime or stop an event or get people out of way and harm with an event, man-made again or natural, is core to what we do. And so we get messages from people that were evacuating in these terrible tornadoes, and the message will literally read in the morning, hey, thank God we got the Everbridge notification, didn't hear the town siren, but all of our phones lit up. We got kids into the root cellar. The house was wiped out, but everyone's safe. Thank you so much for being and doing what you do. Or that family whose father or grandfather was saved from harm when he happened to be suffering from a condition that didn't allow him to make a good judgment and wandered out of his home on a cold day. Those types of abilities to deliver with our solution and have a growing enterprise allow us to bring people in and retain them because they believe we're not only building a business to last and delivering a differentiated value to customers, we're really making a difference in the world. And that is you need a secret sauce, a value like that to encourage people in today's environment, a very strong job market, certainly in the tech space, to pass up that free lunch or that scooter or whatever else you might get in one of those tech Goliaths. So that's how we do it, Neil, today, and continue to focus on a mission as well as a successful business executing entity.
So many great stories there about how you're leveraging technology to make a real difference in the world. And another reason that I enjoy recording this daily tech podcast is learning about how technology can help areas that we don't automatically associate with technology or even think it's touched by technology. So can you tell me more about how critical event management can actually help combat social issues such as human trafficking, school safety, and the impact of climate change, or just how a business can protect their mobile employees and facilities and brand?
Sure. I mean, you bring up, travelers. So one of my favorite stories I learned from bank executives sitting at a round table one day in the UK, shortly after the Paris terrorism attack. And, this very, very large bank has 100,000 employees, I think globally, or 80,000 employees. And so they have employees everywhere, but they don't have a particularly large presence in Paris. And so the evening of the Paris event, they started to see things unfold like many of us on the news, but their security teams were monitoring the events and realized that although they didn't have a lot of Paris employees, there happened to be a big conference in Paris Monday morning, the following Monday morning after that Friday night mass Paris attack that occurred. And so they started reaching out to their business executives, and lo and behold, quite a few of their executives, their top level, in fact, were headed on the Eurostar over Friday night with their wives to enjoy a weekend in Paris before they attended this conference. Just some combination. Not necessarily something that you would be able to know from looking at the travel itinerary somewhere else. And so as they reached out, they found multiple executives on a train going directly into the middle of those Paris attacks. They were able, because of our mobile capability, to understand where a traveler is. And we don't do that by turning on kind of the creepy cell phone and monitoring someone's exact location, but we do things like monitor where they're connecting through Wi-Fi, because the company already owns that secure connection, so we can see that they're hooking onto the internet from a remote location. We can message them and ask them to tell us where they are, and if they're out of harm's way. We can see a travel itinerary that they may have booked, or use the corporate credit card for travel, or maybe an Outlook are scheduled to be in Paris Monday morning, so it would make sense that they're probably leaving this weekend. And in their case, they were able to quickly circle Paris, look at all the people who had one of those location variables that would indicate to the corporation they could be there, reached out and found over 10 different executives and family in tow heading directly into the melee in Paris, and were able to tell them to not leave the train station and shelter in place until they were okay. Equally horrific events of shootings. You think of college campuses in the United States where it's can be just a terrible event that occurs. But active shootings in North America on the rise. They're at their highest level in the last 10 years. And the problem is, in most active shootings, like the ones we heard about recently in all corners of the globe, from New Zealand to the Netherlands, you have about 1 to 5 minutes before the event's over. So there isn't time to bring in law enforcement in 99% of them. What an organization like a school with a multi-building campus can do, though, is they can pinpoint where the event seems to be being reported. So first report of an active shooter, say it's in the science building, and then they can communicate to everyone south and east in all other buildings. If you're within one building, shelter in place and lock the door so someone can't get to you. And in other cases, the recommendation would be run, or your south 2 buildings or north 2 buildings, please evacuate the campus immediately, because the more people you get out of harm's way, the better off you are. And in the actual science building, absolutely shelter in place and barricade the door, because you want to stop someone from randomly getting in. Again, these people tend to walk from hall to hall, door to door, and just try to cause, once they've started one of those attacks, as much problem as possible. In our case, because we can see the students who are revolving all day on a mobile device, we can silently message them. We can often see if they've got their Wi-Fi connected to a local router within 10 to 20 feet where they are on even which floor, and tell them to run versus hide and secure themselves. And in that case, reduce the impact of one of those horrific events. Again, creating the safety of individuals. So whether it's the initial example where you're trying to keep a business running throughout a hundreds of mile path of a major storm, a cyclone or a hurricane, or it's a man-made event, could be cyber, where you're trying to tell people not to turn on their computer and download that fake message from the CEO this morning, because it'll affect all of our computers, or one of the shooting events I talked about, terrorism, an active shooter on a college campus. We can do things to substantially increase the ability for you to keep people safe and the business running.
It's amazing. It really is. I'm curious, though, is there any other areas that your technology is helping that maybe would surprise listeners at just how far-reaching your technology is?
Well, I think when you think of supply chains and the broader employee populations, we recently announced that Chevron was brought onto our critical event management suite, which is a multi-product application that starts with things like the risk intelligence to show you what events are happening, helps you visualize that on a set of screens. In other words, all your people, places, and things, your traveling executives, your office locations where meetings are occurring, and then automate the process of communicating and managing an event to minimize the impact on those people and places, and at the end, even analyze that to do it better the next time. But one example that people might not understand is when a major money center bank or a major theme park has an IT outage, our solutions, a different one of our solutions, what we call IT alerting, is used to actually communicate out of the IT system when it finds a major IT management system finds a broken server that's stopping all their internet banking, or a broken ticket environment that's not allowing you to issue passes into the park. We can identify that problem and get it to the right person in the right location globally by looking at all the schedules and on call, and the person that's fixed it in the past 10 times successfully, which in this case happens to be on call, this example, in a Brussels data center, and get a message directly to him so that he can go apply a patch to bring that ticketing system back up and keep the park traffic flowing, or turn restart that machine that will bring that page up on the internet and allow internet banking to work for 1.5 million customers on the West Coast. And so, although we're often thought of as the managers and assisters to major organizations in disasters, we help with the everyday operational use case for many corporations globally, because getting the right information to the right person, the right place, the right time is a key to solving almost any business challenge.
And you've been on an amazing journey, but I've got to ask, what lessons have you learned along that journey, and what kind of failures and successes have actually driven your career?
Well, I mean, I'll stick for now to Everbridge. I think that, from a building a business standpoint, I have enjoyed a number of different industries and a broad spectrum of small private all the way through very significant, $10 billion plus public market cap organizations, thousands of employees, thousands of enterprise customers globally. And I think in some cases, size is not the only barometer. I think it always comes back to some very fundamental basics of creating products that deliver differentiated value in a sizable market. But it doesn't always have to be the largest market in the world. You don't have to be going after the entire internet with a better search algorithm. You can actually build a meaningful business that can develop a very significant customer base with the resulting hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of revenue, by identifying those gaps in the market and then delivering successfully for customers across a spectrum. Without the differentiation, it's hard. And of course, because my career has been centered around tech, it always helps to be disruptive. So again, bringing it back to the Everbridge example is pretty simple, but the physical safety world, which is one of the worlds we play in, connecting everything from your badging system on a building to get you into a floor or an elevator and get access to a facility, we scoop all that information up as one of those location variables to figure out who is where when. That's one of the ways we know where a student is on a college campus, because today they all have badges to keep the right people in the college campus and the wrong people out, hopefully. But the physical security world for the past 20 years has been focused on buildings, guards, locks, and maybe adding some video. And over the past 10 years, much of our working population in the U.S. and internationally has become mobile, increasingly mobile. They don't work in a single office environment. They're often conducting business like we are today over the phone or from a home or a shared office location. If you look at the largest financial institutions that are building new corporate headquarters or offices, they're making 90% of the space hoteling or virtual space, that when you come in each day, you basically sign in and you're assigned a desk, never necessarily the same office or desk twice in a row. And so when an event happens, how do you know who's where and how to help them? That John Smith is out in the field. Sally Smith is actually traveling in London right now, and Bob is not in his typical building 1. He's in building 4 today and there's a major event? How do you know who is where and therefore how to ensure their safety or get them the right message to ensure the business continues to be successful and operationally continues? And so we are disrupting a market with our Safety Connection product, the physical safety market. And we find and have learned that when you can disrupt the market, you can bring greater value and build a business faster. And so we think about teams first, building teams, not necessarily individual leaders, but teams make great companies. And so we're constantly focused on building the team first. Then we want to have differentiated value or disruptive value. And then we want to be able to ensure that our customers can go on a journey with us, just like our shareholders over time, and really make a difference in their organizations, either with the keeping individuals safe or the businesses operating better. So those are probably the big three that we've learned. Teams matter and people matter, and building the best team often puts us in the position to execute with a good product that's differentiated in a market that can deliver ultimately the last item, real value to customers and change the way they're able to work or operate.
And you've been right at the heart of so much disruptive technology and transformational change, both in the office and in your personal life. And the whole landscape is just continuously evolving. But for anyone listening, is there any advice that you'd pass down who want to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, I think we learn from our history, and if we're smart, we start to understand the longer we've participated in a growth organization or an opportunity, again, be it public or private, wouldn't have to be a business, that the experience matters with a meaningful mission or culture that you can establish to build long-term value. And so because we bring it back so often to team and the people we work with, especially in tech, we think it's about creating an environment. If you can create that environment where people feel motivated and compelled to go above and beyond, more of a culture, and if possible, a mission-based culture, even as we have, you can differentiate yourself, create a more meaningful experience for people, and ultimately that trickles into everything else you do. Whether you're in the public entity, and you're a public servant delivering value for people are going to be more committed to that cause and going the extra mile. If it's in the corporate world or in a business environment, entrepreneurial to larger, you want to inspire those people to go above and beyond for customers, to create differentiated product and value, to disrupt markets, and to service customers. And that mission environment around people will enable you to do that at, we think, a more reliable and scalable basis than you can do just by focusing on pure numbers, dollars and cents. And that doesn't mean that execution isn't a hallmark. It is for us and of a well-run business or high-growth business. But at the end of the day, it does come back to people. I'm happy to say and repeatedly say it. If you can create the right team and motivate them properly, at least in our business, in the technology space and probably the services space as well as a lot of others in today's economy, you can make a big difference. And then obviously the other attributes I said are important. Differentiated technology, real value to customers, a large enough market so you can make a difference. All are important, but we would say those are all trumped by having the right team, not just a leader, but the right team. There's never been a business I've been involved with that I was able to make it successful. The team that we had at both the highest levels and the mid-management of the company are why the business is successful over and over again.
And what about the road ahead for Everbridge? Is there anything else you can share about Is there anything else you can share about the future things that you're working on?
Sure. I mean, we're in the early innings. We talk to our financial sponsors, our shareholders publicly all the time about the fact that our critical event management platform, our journey has really evolved from being a single product company, like a lot of tech companies or manufacturing companies. We started with a single product, mass notification, almost 15 years ago. Evacuate an entire city when a flood or a hurricane's coming, or there's been a massive man-made event like terrorism or shooting or something. A single product. And got that deployed and delivered for customers time and time again, and became the clear market leader in that space. And then, like a lot of other companies, manufacturing or tech or services, broadened that family of products, moving from a single product to several different products that could be purchased, because we built a customer base, a thriving customer base of thousands of enterprise customers. And like most other people, we understood that it was easier to sell into our existing customer base than to find a whole new customer. We actually want to try to do some of both in every single quarter of our existence. So having more products to sell into the base would allow us to create a broader relationship with them and ultimately drive growth through not only the base, cross and upsells, but also then net new customers brought on to one of our products. And then most recently, only a few years ago, after moving from one product to 8 or 9 products, we started to tightly integrate a few of those products to take on a much bigger problem, which was when a major organization, be it a public entity or private, and we started with the private corporate America, when they're faced with a major event anywhere in the globe, how do they manage through it? How do they know it's going to affect them? How do they prepare for it? How do they take the actions that keep their people safe and the operations running? And then how do they recover afterwards and analyze it and ensure they did the best possible job so that next time they can do it even better? Keep people safer, avoid business disruption, keep the supply chain open, etc. And so for us, critical event management and that suite was just released 2 years ago. We would say that in a baseball analogy that we're fond of here, given we're home of the Boston Red Sox, it would be that we're in the first inning. And that is just beginning to roll out. We intend to put 2 more solutions into that product set this year. In this current quarter, we're introducing a strong crisis management or critical event management solution, which is the actual management of all the tasks and workflows involved. As I mentioned, the large coffee purveyor with hundreds of stores disrupted and thousands of employees, that involves 10, 20, 30,000 tasks in maybe 250 different locations spread across 7 states. How do you manage that and put it onto one pane of glass, or a CEO or someone running a $20 billion company, an enterprise globally with tens of thousands of locations, can figure out how to keep those optimized, their people safe, and the business running? That's all done with this crisis management solution that we're releasing into the platform today, this quarter. And then later this year, we'll release analytics. And we've been on a path to introduce new products and extend the platform into new markets, both geographically and from a vertical market presence, where we'll take it from primarily dealing with the corporate clients today to governments and entities like our major customer base in state and local government, the city of New York or the state of New York or Washington, D.C., or the entire state of Florida or San Francisco or Chicago, and allow them to use that platform to manage the most affecting events that occur with them, as well as new geographies. We haven't begun to sell it internationally, but we'll move into the international markets. And that international markets over the past few quarters have been growing at over 150% year over year. So absolute hyper growth for a public company to be growing in a market at that speed. And so we have a number of new things coming down the pipe. And when I bring it back to some of your previous questions of how do we engage and what lessons we've learned, boy, when we can keep that growth moving like that on a mission-based philosophy and culture, it creates a great environment for new employees to come in and get involved and make a difference, and retain existing employees. So it all works together, mapping out that future and having some of that growth occurring with the company. And so that's a big focus for us, continue to introduce new products and engage in new markets globally.
Now, I'm quite conscious we've covered a wide range of topics on the podcast today, and there's going to be a lot of people listening that are going to have probably more than a few questions or wanting to find out more. So what is the best way of anyone listening to find you online, or maybe just contact a member of your team if they've got any questions?
Sure. I mean, the most direct route is just over the web, www.everbridge.com. Because we're a public company, we're often seen at financial conferences and numerous events that are recorded and played back. And we have both the investment community that you can access through that means, as well as our normal press and news around Everbridge that is quite active and involved. And then most likely you can see us and engage with us through your local community, through our products like our public safety applications that are delivered to over 200 million Americans alone, and communicate to you just about the fact that there's a lightning storm moving through the play fields in a particular town, or there's a possibility of severe inclement weather happening, during this week's ball game. And so feel free to engage with us on an application level by downloading it from your local town. We're often the system standing behind their ability to communicate and talk to you about events occurring in your community, or through everbridge.com and our corporate persona.
I absolutely love how you're making a real difference here by leveraging technology. And by that, you're even saving lives in the process in many situations as well. It's a fantastic story. And we've covered so much ground today, like I said a few moments ago. So more than anything, just a big thank you for coming on today, sharing your story and delivering so much value. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
We've all spent time enjoying ourselves in large crowds at large events, but have you ever stopped to think about how critical management software can help organisers in the event of an attack, or even help combat social issues such as human trafficking and disasters, attacks, business disruptions and cyber attacks? For those reasons alone, consider my eyes open today. And I cannot thank Jaime enough for coming on and sharing those stories and the value and his insights and expertise. But what did you take away from today's conversation? I want you to email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You get me on Twitter @NeilCHughes and even on Instagram too. So keep those messages, questions, insights and anything else coming over to me. But it's time for me to walk off into the sunset once again and say thanks for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.